Real Virginia is proudly produced by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. For almost a century, Farm Bureau has been a friend of the farm for all Virginians. Visit our website at vafb.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Virginia, a show about Virginia agriculture and the people who produce the wonderful local products we enjoy. Brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Here's what's coming up in today's program. Gym workouts and crop management share an important principle for getting the best results. Chef Tammy has a flavorful soup for sweet potato lovers. And meet the Virginia businessman whose experiments could one day lower fertilizer costs.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart always.
Welcome back to Real Virginia, everyone. We're coming to you this week from Cloverdale Farm in King William County. You might think that a farmer who had a successful crop last year will plant the same thing this year, but that's not always the best way to keep the soil healthy.
In these first months of the new year, farmers are tending to the cover crop they planted after last year's harvest. But just because farmers planted peanuts or corn last year doesn't mean they will grow the same thing on the same plot of land this year. Many farmers rotate the crops they plant in order to get the best use of the land. Jeremy Yeager manages crop production for Mercer Farms, which has operations in Pennsylvania and Clark County, Virginia. This field currently has rye on it, planted as a cover crop after harvesting corn.
If we just grew corn after corn after corn and combined that corn and left the crop residue there, there's a lot bigger chance of diseases, certainly insects, but diseases are the big one.
In order to prevent diseases in the soil, farmers who plant a grass crop like corn will likely switch to a legume crop, such as soybeans or peanuts, which aren't susceptible to the same kind of diseases.
If somebody is growing corn for grain and leaving the residue there, there would be a benefit then to growing soybeans the next year and maybe wheat the year after that.
Fitness enthusiasts say you have to vary your workout in order to keep your muscles guessing. Many farmers rotate their crops for the same reason, so the soil nutrients don't get too accustomed to any one type of plant. Weed control is another reason why farmers rotate crops. There are dozens of different types of weeds. Virginia farmers commonly deal with grass weeds and broadleaf weeds. By switching between grass crops and broadleaf crops, farmers can reduce or prevent either type of weed from smothering out the main crop. The primary crop may vary from year to year, but farmers are increasingly using rye as the main cover crop.
We used to use wheat, but now we've gone to rye.
Why is that?
Just gives the soil more biomass, more nutrients. We feel like it maintains more nutrients in the soil. It grows taller than wheat, so in the spring when we burn it down, gives the soil more tilth with the more biomass on top in the spring when we go to plant.
Rogers has just harvested cotton in his field in Surry County. In addition to rye, clover, vetch, peas, and other legumes are favored by cotton growers. Some Virginia farmers are experimenting with other cover crops, including sesame, but rye is most favored now.
Rye is king. It's one of the best cover crops that you can use to put nutrients back into the soil and organic matter.
Right.
So we plant a root crop like sweet potatoes and elephant garlic. Mm-hmm. Once we harvest, we plant rye, and we keep planting rye for another 4 years before we'll come back and plant another root crop like garlic or sweet potatoes.
Cover crops don't just maintain the land, they can also prepare the soil with nutrients that can help certain crops get off to a good start once they've been planted in the spring.
Mixing in some legumes like clover, vetches, there's different vetches, hairy vetch, that they're legumes that will help grow some nitrogen to feed the corn next year, so that I'd have to use less commercial fertilizer. We're in essence growing our nutrients rather than having to purchase and apply them.
This farm is primarily a dairy operation, but the corn they grow here is critical to the dairy's success because it's used to feed the cows. Once the field is harvested, the cow's manure is used to help fertilize the field before a new round of planting. Crop rotation also helps the environment by preventing nutrient runoff and promoting carbon sequestration, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Just because farmers are planting one crop, say corn, on one plot of land, it doesn't mean they aren't planting corn on other land tracts they manage. Indeed, crop diversification is part of many farmers' business plan. In Clark County, I'm Burke Moeller reporting.
Disease prevention is a big part of a row crop farmer's maintenance plan. Scientists say gray leaf spot is the #1 disease in all corn production. Corn rootworms pose another danger to a farmer's field. The good news is that other profitable crops like soybeans can't get gray leaf spot and other grass crop diseases. However, soybeans and other legumes have their own diseases and pests to worry about. Phytophthora has been called the plant destroyer, and for good reason. It's a classification of parasites that were first recognized in 1875 by German Heinrich Anton de Berry, but new offshoots have been identified as recently as 2019.
I'm Mark Viette. Coming up on In the Garden, I'm going to talk about how you can protect your birds during the winter months. Stay with us.
Farming is a rewarding way of life, but it can also be full of challenges. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text the AgriStress helpline at 833-897-2473. It offers 24/7 access to professionals who can support someone in need and help find mental health services in your community. Please make the call, because healthy farms depend on healthy farm families. That's 833-897-2474.
Winter weather can be hard on our feathered friends. Mark Viette has some suggestions to keep them warm and safe in the garden.
During the fall, midwinter, late winter, a lot of our birds are fed upon by hawks. And one of the hawks that migrates into our area, I live here in the Shenandoah Valley, is known as the Cooper's hawk. And the Cooper's hawk will hide in trees and evergreens and feed on our birds that we're trying to attract with our feeders and special bird seed. So, one of the ways that you can really help protect your songbirds is to create piles of brush. And these piles can be 4 or 5 feet wide, maybe 8, 9 feet long, and up to 4 feet tall. And by piling branches or your prunings that you have in a garden, it creates a hiding place for your birds. So what I do is, and I like this one here, I like branches that have multiple layers. Something like a crab apple is great. And you're going to come in and pile branches, especially branches like this, that will give you space for the birds. So we take dead branches, we take prunings. As you see here, even Whitey the garden cat likes the shelter of the wood pile. And you can make these bigger. So if you have like a woods or something, you can make this even 6 feet tall by 5 feet wide. These piles also protect birds from the snow and the elements that you might get during the winter months. And what I normally do is throughout the winter, as I prune in the garden dead branches, I keep adding to this. It doesn't hurt to put even evergreens, which I have some here, and leaves. So when you get predators, even now Whitey doesn't feed on birds, but you might have cats. So this provides a lot of protection from predators like the Cooper's hawk. And I'm going to make one pile here. I'm going to make another pile over here, and I'll probably put another pile over here. This is a great way to help protect your birds in your backyard from predators. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
For more garden tips, go to inthegardenradio.com.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Coming up on Heart of the Home, curried sweet potato soup. I hope you'll stay with us.
Our cow, she walks into the barn and she gets milked. Milk's taken from her and put through a chiller. And that milk's taken from body temperature of a cow, which is about 102.5, and dropped to 35 degrees and put straight onto a tractor trailer. And it goes straight to the plant the next day. So most of the milk that's sitting on your store shelves is probably less than 48 hours old. And that's a pretty good testament to how efficient we are.
Homemade soup really hits the spot this time of year. Chef Tammy Brawley shares her recipe featuring delicious Virginia sweet potatoes in the heart of the home.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley. Welcome to Heart of the Home. Today I'm going to show you guys a delicious warming soup to do in the winter. This is a curried sweet potato soup, a recent recipe that I've discovered, and it's turned into my new favorite. We're going to have a burner on here with a little bit of olive oil in it, and we're going to turn that up just a bit to do some sauteing. I already have a little olive oil added in here, and we've got that nice and warm. One thing about cooking is that you always want to make sure you never add a product to a cold fat. It becomes unhealthy at that point. So you always want to cook at the right temperature. This has already been warming up for a bit. I have about a cup or so of chopped onions with maybe some leftover parsley that was on my cutting board earlier. We're going to add that into our pot, and you immediately want to start stirring that up. The onions are going to start softening pretty quickly. I am going to hit that with a little bit of kosher salt. Not so much kosher as much as you want a coarse grain salt in this. Really just about any cooking you want to use a coarse grain. A smaller sea salt tends to be a little bit more iodized, taste a little saltier. I don't really cook with a lot of sea salts, but I will finish products with sea salts. Now, in the interest of time, I did cook the sweet potatoes ahead. I simply peeled them and I diced them. Keep in mind that something bigger is always going to take longer to cook. I did these in a fairly small dice, mainly because I knew they wouldn't take that long to cook, but also too, we're going to be pureeing this soup. If they were larger chunks, they would take longer to cook, but I cooked them earlier and boiled them until they became fork tender, and now I'm just going to simply add them into our onions. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of stir that up a little. And now I'm going to add about a teaspoon of garlic, chopped garlic. And this is what makes the recipe as far as I'm concerned. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of a curry powder. You know, if you're not a curry fan, that's okay. You can probably omit this. I am a curry fan, so I don't mind using it. You know, and there is kind of a misnomer about curry out there. A lot of people think they don't like curry powder. Curry actually means mixture. A curry powder is actually a mixture of several different spices at once. So that is somewhat of a misnomer as far as curry goes. So we're going to stir up those spices in there with the onions and the sweet potatoes. You can see they're already starting to kind of break apart a little bit because they've been cooked previously. That's totally fine. And now we're going to come back and we're going to add, your recipe calls for 6 cups of chicken stock. You may find you don't need that much. I always like to kind of eyeball it to see. So we're going to, I just added 2 cups, and I have an unopened container here, unopened quart container. I like to add, you know, start out fairly conservative. So I probably added about another cup, which really only is 3. But as you start to stir it, you can almost tell how thick it's going to be. So I do want to add a little bit more, maybe another cup or so. So you may be able to get away with 4 cups of stock versus 6. And then the other thing is that once we puree it, if we need to add more stock at that time, it's perfectly acceptable to do that. I've turned the heat up just a little bit, mainly to bring the sweet potatoes back up to temperature with the onions and stuff, but it won't take very long. So our soup has come up to temp with the cooked sweet potatoes and the chicken stock and onions and curry powder and garlic. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to start pureeing it. I'm going to use a stick blender here, and I know not everybody has one of these. Most people do have regular blenders, but a word of caution: when you're doing a regular blender and blending soup, you want to make sure you take that little plastic lid off the top of the blender top, and then you want to top it with a towel, okay? And you want to pulse the blender to get the soup up in temperature. If you simply turn that on without pulsing it, you're going to explode. You're going to unfortunately get a burn. So if you are going to use a regular blender for these sorts of things, you want to make sure that you vent that top. I personally love a stick blender, and I tell people all the time that the right tool for the right job, and this is what this is. It is a blender. It's got a blade on the bottom, and I can blend right in the pot that I'm cooking in, and that's a real advantage. So we're going to come through here and we're going to blend. Going to get a little loud. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn the burner down as well. And you can tilt it as you go, but you don't want to push that button and lift up the blender, because you will then end up wearing it and burn yourself. Come back with your spoon and start looking for large chunks that might need to be blended. You might have blended it up pretty perfect already, and to be honest, it looks like I did. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to add 2 cups of heavy cream. You can add the dairy of your choice. You can actually leave the dairy out and it's still a delicious soup, but I like the dairy. So we have 2 cups of heavy cream we're going to add to that. It's going to just enhance the flavor quite a bit with a little bit of richness. That is pretty darn perfect. And then to the point of not adding the whole 6 cups of chicken stock, had I have added the 6 cups, it would have been quite a bit thinner, and then by adding the cream, it also would have thinned it out. So I feel good in the fact that I probably used about 4 cups of stock as opposed to 6. So you might want to keep that in mind when you're making this recipe at home. Wow. I wish you guys could smell this. All right, now our soup is pretty much ready. What you want to keep in mind here is the prep that I did ahead and the time that it took for me to do the soup. This is something, if you cook the sweet potatoes in the morning before you go to work, or even the night before, leave them in the refrigerator, and the next night when you come home from work, you can make this soup in less than an hour, which would be great for dinner. So we have a bowl here, and we're actually just going to pour the soup into the middle of it. Let's see if we can do this without making a mess. Beautiful. And one thing I love to do with this is to garnish it. And these are your French fried onions like you put on your green bean casseroles at the holidays. So we're just going to come back with a little bit of that. Put it right into the middle. And it's delicious with this flavor with the onions. I love doing this recipe. Again, as I said earlier, it's my new favorite soup. All right, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Curried sweet potato soup. Join us next time on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the heart of the home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.
Sweet potatoes belong to the bindweed or morning glory family. They're a healthy addition to a well-rounded meal. A typical baked sweet potato has just 90 calories and contains vitamins A, C, and B6. Darker sweet potatoes have more beta-carotene than their lighter partners. Sweet potato leaves are also edible and can be prepared like spinach or turnip greens. And of course, sweet potato pie is a staple for many Virginians, especially around the holidays.
Fertilizer prices have increased dramatically in recent years, but one Virginian is experimenting with a way to turn that around, and he's been recognized for his work statewide. Norm Hyde reports.
Much of the commercial fertilizer sold to farmers and gardeners in the United States is either extracted from natural gas or mined from the ground. This is an expensive process with lots of byproducts. The owner of NTP Technologies in Chesterfield County is hoping to use just air and water to advance farming into the 21st century.
Basically, the machine has a compressor in it, a plasma core, as well as a power supply. Those three components make up the majority of the machine itself. Right now, if you can see, we have a gallon of water here, several gallons of water here. It just uses air and electricity in order to power the actual system. We then use that air and the plasma, ionizes the air, and then we bubble it through this stone. And if you can see, what we'll do is we'll actually just place it in here, the air bubbler into the water. One button on the machine, turn the machine on, you can see the bubbles start going. And what that's doing is it's ionizing air just from the atmosphere, pushing it through the plasma system, and actually generating nitrates in the water.
John Ireland stopped by Virginia State University's Randolph Farm Research Station to demonstrate his product. He has a background in petrochemicals and the fertilizer industry and a master's degree in biochemical engineering. He says the technology to extract nitrogen products from air is a century old. The challenge has been how to extract it affordably.
So we're going to test the machine. It's just turned off a little while ago. And we use these test strips. They do nitrate and nitrites. The way you actually do it is you just take a strip, and you can see there's no colors on this strip. We're actually then going to dip it into the water for approximately 2 seconds, just to get it wet. And as it comes out, you can see now its color. If you take a look at it against the color chart, you can actually see the difference in terms of nitrates and nitrites. Nitrites being on the bottom, nitrates on the top. It's about 10 to 1, 25 to 225 parts per million nitrites, 250 parts per million nitrates.
What's interesting about the product is that 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. And the only way to get that nitrogen to plant has typically been through bacterial processes, nitrification or nitrogen fixation. His technology takes that nitrogen from the air and makes it available to the plant. And if that can work out well and be transformed into a product that can be scalable and usable, that can really be very important to agriculture.
Scott Lohman is Vice President of Research at the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research in Danville, Virginia. His team is testing whether this technology really can deliver the fertilizer elements that plants need. As part of its mission, IALR works with several companies and academic clients to improve processes for controlled environment agriculture operations.
Controlled environment ag allows things to be grown indoors year-round. It's much more like advanced manufacturing. It's a high-tech industry, so robotics play a big role. The food is more local, so you're serving regional markets, and they're able to get fresh food immediately. It cuts way down on transportation costs. Again, it's jobs for the region. The product is fresher, and you know every step of it. When you're in controlled environment ag, you control all of those, and it makes it a very promising technology for the U.S. to not displace corn or soybeans. It'll never do that. But these smaller specialty crops, it's a tremendous business producer.
The NLab prototype shows so much promise that it won the second annual Virginia Foundation for Agriculture Innovation and Rural Sustainability Agricultural and Forestry Innovation Challenge, better known as the Bullpen. Ireland and the NLab competed against 3 other finalists for cash prizes. The goal of the competition is to encourage more innovative ideas to advance agriculture and forestry in Virginia.
Bullpen provided me a venue to actually showcase our technology to the farmers here in Virginia. We were a finalist, which was nice. We got a little bit of money for that. And then as the winner, we got a little bit more, which is nice because it's going to give me the ability to do some additional testing and trials, as well as talk and network with more Virginia farmers and try and get this technology out into the marketplace as quickly as possible.
Since this process extracts nitrates from the atmosphere through water, Ireland says it's ideal for use in greenhouse operations, where irrigation systems are already in use.
Plants like these are in soil. You can actually have others that are actually in water. Either way, they need nutrients applied to them on a regular basis. We're providing a material that has no salt in it, that's good for the environment, and that our job is to make sure it's affordable for the farmer.
Eventually, he foresees scaling up to the point that any crop operation that uses irrigation could benefit. He's interested in finding growers willing to test his machine in real-life conditions and investors willing to support his growing company. Working with the IALR is just the first step.
Working with startups like MPT Technologies is really the most fun things we do, because a lot of times larger companies have a lot of things figured out already, but smaller companies, we really feel like we can help be beneficial to them.
With supply shortages and high petroleum prices, anything that can help farmers and growers stabilize their input costs could be a real plus. Who knows, NPT Technologies could be a key success story for the future, born and tested right here in Virginia. To learn more about the Bullpen Challenge for agricultural entrepreneurs, visit the VA Fairs website and check out NPT Technologies website and the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research online as well. Reporting from Richmond, Virginia, I'm Norm Hyde.
We're so glad you could join us to celebrate all the bounty Virginia has to offer. From the kitchen to your home and garden to our beautiful wide open spaces, we're proud to say that this is Real Virginia. For everyone from the Virginia Farm Bureau, thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia. Home in my heart always.
Every spring and fall, Virginia farmers and other motorists nearly collide on rural roads. Sometimes these collisions can be dangerous or even fatal. Glenn Keller of Shenandoah County says when a car traveling 55 miles an hour suddenly meets much slower moving farm equipment, the odds of a collision shoot up.
It's pretty dangerous when you get out on the road because we have a lot of hills in this valley, blind hills where you don't know what may be coming on the other side of those hills. And when we move something wide, like the piece of equipment behind me, we usually have an escort in front. But if the people don't pay attention to that, you have to be prepared to react pretty quick. We'll get to a blind hill and someone will follow you for a mile or so, and they finally get enough of it and want to go around, and they're usually upset and pick the wrong place.
Farm equipment operators are required to display a slow-moving vehicle emblem when they're on a public road. When you see that, or any farm vehicle, slow down. Give them plenty of space to do their job so you both can go home safely. This message brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation Safety Advisory Committee.